is going to be a bit of a historical one. The case is the Tsuyama massacre, or in Japanese that's Tsuyama Jiken. It doesn't have a fancy name, that just means the Tsuyama incident. So, this case takes place in 1938, and to this day this case is the biggest massacre done with a gun in Japan, and it's the deadliest shooting by a lone gunman in Japanese history. And apparently, until 1982, it was known as the world's second worst massacre by a single person, but it was coming in second place behind the 1927 Bath School disaster. I've never heard of that. It doesn't sound fun though, obviously. And it fell down another rank, I guess to third place, when, I'm gonna mess up the pronunciation of this name because I don't know how to pronounce Korean names, but Woo Boon-kon. He killed 27 people, but the number varies depending on what article you look at, I guess, in 1982 in South Korea. And I read that the reason that he went on that rampage was because his girlfriend slapped him in the chest because she was trying to kill a fly that had landed on him while he was taking a nap. And he was just like, I gotta go kill a lot of people now. Wild. I was thinking about doing a video on that one, but like I looked up how to pronounce that guy's name, and the only thing that came up was a pronunciation video where the voice pronounced it with an American accent. So like, why would I need to know how to pronounce it the way that I would naturally pronounce it anyway, and the way that may or may not be wrong? So I would feel bad mispronouncing all the names. But anyway, so the Tsuyama massacre happened on May 21st, 1938 in the rural village of Kamo. The full name is Kamocho Kurami, but I'm just going to be referring to it as Kamo because that's how most of the articles refer to it. Kamocho Kurami. And that village was close to Tsuyama in Okayama Prefecture, Empire of Japan. And when I say Empire of Japan, I'm talking about Imperial Japan, which in Japanese is Dai Nippon Teikoku. So that's Japan from the Meiji Restoration in 1868 until, that's when the shogun was overthrown, if you know anything about that, until the enactment of the post-World War II 1947 Constitution and formation of modern Japan. So it's the Japan that went to war a bunch and colonized Korea and various parts of Taiwan and Manchuria. And Manchuria is a mix of northeast China and far east Russia. So, we're talking about that Japan. The village has since been merged with different towns and cities over the years due to depopulation, and it wasn't really that populated to begin with, honestly. So now the area is part of the city of Tsuyama, and the village's population at the time of the massacre back in 1938 was 23 households and 111 people total, so pretty small. So our man in this video is Mutsuo Toi. He was born in Okayama Prefecture on March 5th, 1917 to well-off parents, but they ended up passing away from tuberculosis when he was a baby. He also had an older sister. And so, a little bit about tuberculosis. It was called consumption back in the day, so if you've ever heard of that, consumption, that's tuberculosis. And it is caused by a bacteria called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The bacteria usually attacks the lungs, but they can also attack any part of the body, such as the kidney, spine, brain, etc. Not everyone infected with the TB bacteria becomes sick, and the bacteria that cause it are spread through the air when an infected person coughs or sneezes. So, it's sort of a classic respiratory illness in that regard. Apparently, most people who get infected with TB don't actually have symptoms, but when the symptoms do happen, they usually include a cough, which sometimes is blood-tinged, weight loss, night sweats, and fever. Treatment isn't required for those without symptoms, and patients with active symptoms will require a long course of treatment involving multiple antibiotics. That's in modern days, of course. And so now it's viewed as being curable and preventable, partially by a vaccine. vaccine, but at the time it was seen as incurable and was often fatal for people who did have an infection. Which it was for his parents, who of course died of tuberculosis, like I said. And so when that happened, Mutsuo Toi and his sister were brought up by their grandmother in the village of Kamo. As soon as Mutsuo reached school age, he entered the nearby Nishikamo Elementary School, which is Nishikamo Shokakko in Japanese. At the time, he had excellent grades and was regarded as a child prodigy in the village, but he wasn't that good at sports, so he didn't have that going for him. And another thing working against him was the fact that his grandmother was a little overbearing from what I read, and it was pretty common for her to keep him out of school, even if all he had was like a slight fever. So he would often be out of school for 3 or 4 days a week, very frequently. And as a result, he pretty much had no friends at school. He was an outgoing, obedient, well-behaved child, and he spent a lot of time at home playing with his sister, who he was very close to. Because of his intelligence and good grades, he could have, entered middle school after graduating from elementary school, and his teachers hoped that he would go to middle school so that he could go to university in the future. And since this was like way back in the day, a lot of kids would graduate elementary school and then they would go to help on like their farm or go to work in the mine or that kind of thing to support their family. So like going to middle school or even high school, I guess, wasn't that common. And he wanted to go to Okayama Prefecture's #1 middle school, whatever school that was. That's all the article said about it. But his grandmother didn't want him to go, and she basically cried and said, quote, "If Mutsuo enters a junior high school, he'll live in a dorm, and I'll be very lonely." He would move out and go live on the school grounds. And Mutsuo himself, I guess, didn't want to abandon his grandmother, so he ended up giving up on going to middle school, which ended up, socially isolating him even more, since he didn't have any peers to spend time with anymore, I guess. And at the age of 17, his sister, who, like I said, he was very close to, got married and moved out of their house in 1934, which led to him becoming, completely socially withdrawn. And he basically became what's now called a hikikomori, which is just like a shut-in, basically. And, it's the stereotype of, a guy who never leaves his bedroom and only plays video games and watches anime and reads manga and is a giant nerd, I guess. That stereotype anyway. But obviously, anime and video games weren't really around back then, so I'm not sure what he did while he was being a hikikomori, but that's basically what he was. He also, around that time, became really, really interested in the story of Sada Abe, who was a prostitute who, in May 1936, strangled one of her customers, or her lover, I guess, to death, and then cut off his penis. In another article I read, it said that after she murdered her lover, she cut off his penis and testicles and then carried them around with her in her kimono. But either way, it was a pretty sensational case at the time, and a lot of people followed it in Japan. She ended up going to jail for 5 years and wrote an autobiography, which, I don't know when she wrote that, but he read about her a lot, and he read the testimony from her trial even, and he himself had started writing a novel called Yuto Kaio Maru. But I tried looking that up, and I couldn't find anything, what it means. But the first half, Yuto, means an ambitious plan or enterprise. Kai means ocean. If you've heard the word umi, it's the Chinese pronunciation, because there are different pronunciations of kanji in Japanese. It's kind of weird, but and then o at the end means king, and maru means round. So he has an ambitious plan to become the round king of the ocean. I don't know. He also became very sexually active, and he got involved in doing yobai, or night crawling, which was a rural custom that involved creeping into a young woman's bedroom during the night to try to have sex with her. And I was reading about it, and one article made a little joke, which was, yobai is yabai, which yabai means, like, it's sort of the same as, like, crazy or, like, wild in English. Like, oh, that's crazy. Like, it can be a good thing or a bad thing. In this case, it would be a bad thing. I just thought it was funny. So basically, what yobai is that, so yeah, the dude would sneak into a chick's bedroom and ask her if she wants to have sex, and if she wanted to, then they would have sex and then spend the night together in silence, and the man would leave the next morning. And usually, it was said that the girl's parents probably knew about what was going on. They would pretend that they didn't. And in rural Japan, it was even a normal way for men and women to find their husband or wife. Supposedly. There are many different rules and customs depending on the era and the part of Japan that was happening in. In some places, any post-puberty woman, married or unmarried, could be visited by any post-puberty man, married or unmarried, from the village, and even by men from other villages and travelers. Yeah. In some places, only married women and widows could be visited, while single girls could not. And there are other variations. For example, there is like the closed type yobai, which is when only men from the same village had the right to go visit women, so like outsiders couldn't do it. But the similarity between most of the rituals, or most of the versions, was that consent from the female was required. And one article that I read speculated about whether or not it really was consensual in most cases, because the inability to say no is sort of rooted in Japanese culture very deeply. Like, for instance, if I were to ask someone out to just go get like a drink or something, and they wanted to say no, they wouldn't just say no. They would be like, ma, sore wa chotto, like that, which is like, well, that's a little, and that means no, you know? So, it's that kind of thing. But anyway, so yobai's popularity has died out, as I'm sure you can imagine, but in some places it happened all the way up until the 1950s. So, back to the story though. In May 1937, Mutsuo was diagnosed with tuberculosis himself, which, like I said, was viewed as a death sentence and was very, very strongly feared because it was incurable. And so, because of him having TB, the women in the village who he had been yobaing with started to reject him, and he thought they hated him for being hypersexual, which, I don't know, he kind of sounds like a man whore, but anyway. At the time, since Japan was about to go to war, or already was at war, I'm not sure, the Second Sino-Japanese War with China started in 1937. Lots of men his age were being drafted or joining the army on their own, since it was, you know, a big honor to go off and fight in the war. So he tried to do that himself, but he ended up getting rejected from military service because there's apparently a pretty thorough physical exam that they would do on anyone who was trying to join. And, you know, obviously someone with TB should not be joining the military, because they wouldn't be able to fight probably due to all the respiratory symptoms, and they would get everyone around them sick. Which, you know, no one really wants that, right? So, word got out in the town, and people would talk about him behind his back, or they would, like, completely scramble to avoid him if they saw him walking down the street when he was out and about, you know? So, he was pretty isolated and all alone other than his grandmother, and he started to feel really lonely, as well as resentful of the people in the village who had wronged him, as he saw it. Which, to be fair, they were kind of being assholes, but I don't know, you kind of can't blame them also, because, like, no one really wants to go catch tuberculosis, right? So, Mutsuo's deteriorating mental and physical health were pretty well known around the village, and he made no secret of his hatred for certain people, and openly spoke about a plan to several neighbors. There's one article I read that said he even went out to the mountains to practice shooting in broad daylight and not caring who saw him do it. And that article also also said that in order to raise funds to buy a bunch of guns, Mutsuo even used the land, which his family owned a good amount of, as a guarantee to get money, with the claim that he was going to use it to hospitalize himself for tuberculosis treatment. But instead, he bought a bunch of guns from a gun shop in Kobe through friends. And he specifically chose to buy shotguns because they do a lot of damage up close. Like, you know, they just fire a big spray of pellets, assuming that you're using like buckshot. So, you know, you don't really have to worry about it hitting the person that you're pointing your gun at, because it's gonna, if they're in close range anyway. So, the villagers ended up becoming concerned enough to contact the police, who came to Mutsuo's house and ended up confiscating a gun that he had in his collection, confiscating the guns that he'd amassed. I read in that same article that was saying some of the other stuff I said about him going to the mountains and stuff, that the villagers themselves didn't contact the police. It was actually his grandmother who did, because she was sick and he had put medicine for her illness, whatever that was, into some soup, and she saw him do that and called the police, claiming that he was trying to poison her. But he wasn't, though. But either way, the police came and seized his guns, but he either managed to keep one hidden that the police didn't find, or he managed to buy another one because he ended up getting his hands on a Browning shotgun and not telling anyone about it this time. So, on the evening of May 20th, around 5 p.m., according to that one article that I read, Mutsuo, who's 21 at the time, cut the electricity line to the village of Kamo, which left the community in darkness. But the villagers weren't really worried about it and just thought it was a run-of-the-mill power outage, because I'm sure there were plenty of those back in 1938, right? In a tiny village in the mountains. But later on that night, he rode his bike around the village to make sure that everyone was in their houses, everyone he wanted to shoot. And he chose to do it at that time, like at night, to make sure that everyone he wanted to shoot would be, you know, home. So then he waited until 1:30 a.m. on May 21st, technically, and he began his spree by killing his 76-year-old grandmother by decapitating her with an axe in her sleep. After that, armed with his Browning shotgun, a katana, which is a samurai sword if you're not familiar, and that axe, and several daggers, and 200 rounds of ammunition, he strapped 2 flashlights to his head and prowled through the village, entering the unlocked homes of his neighbors. Because, you know, this was a rural village where everyone knew everyone, so they didn't really lock their doors, I guess. Over the course of about 90 minutes, he killed 29 neighbors, 27 of whom died at the scene of the incident, while 2 others were fatally wounded, but died of their injuries later. And his victims were between the ages of 5 and 86, though other articles listed the number as 30 or even 33. And he seriously injured 3 others, and like I said, it took about an hour and a half, 90 minutes. And that number of people was almost half of the residents of the small community, according to one article anyway. Yeah, I guess there were 111, right? So I guess 30 is technically almost half of that. I guess 55 is half. Anyway, so this next part is from an article that I found that was in Chinese, which I Google translated. So I don't know if it's completely accurate and legitimate. You know, some stuff could have gotten mistranslated. But it did have a lot of the details, a lot of the same details as others, so I decided it was good enough. It had a lot of the different details that weren't included in the other articles as well. So during the massacre, Mutsuo first went to Kishida Katsuya in the north of the village and killed Mrs. Kishida and 2 children with his katana. After killing them, Mutsuo entered Nishikawa Hideshi's house and started shooting with the shotgun using buckshot. Mrs. Nishikawa not only was killed, but she ended up with a hole the size of an egg in her chest. Mrs. Nishikawa, viscera scattered all over who would be woken up by that and wondering, like, what the fuck is going on, you know? So Mutsuo continued to run from house to house, shooting and killing as many people as he could. But he didn't kill indiscriminately, because apparently during the rampage he encountered an old man who hadn't said anything wrong about him, who had never said anything bad about him. And, even though the old man was awake and had run into him, Mutsuo didn't kill him. But what's worse is that he ended up having to kill some people he didn't plan on killing, because one of the women who'd broken up with him ended up running away from him into another family's house and hiding there, which caused Mutsuo to kill the entire family along with her. I mean, obviously he didn't have to, but that's what he did. So by 3 a.m., the whole thing was over with, and according to that article, he ended up walking to a nearby village and borrowed a pen and paper from the Takeda family, telling them that he wouldn't kill innocent people, so please don't worry. They shouldn't feel like they were in danger from him because they weren't connected. So he ended up writing a suicide note with the pen and paper that he borrowed, and in the note, he first apologized to his sister and grandmother, saying that he had been treated indifferently by society since his illness, and that society should sympathize with lonely and helpless tuberculosis patients. I mean, that part's not wrong, but doesn't really justify going out and killing everyone. At the end of his note, Mutsuo wrote, "It's almost dawn. Let's die." So he left that village and went into the mountains, I guess, or the woods or wherever, and he committed suicide with the Browning shotgun, basically pointing it at his chest and pulling the trigger with his toe. Because, the barrel would have been too long to reach. And he did die instantly because of that. So he left several long suicide notes, like I said, where he talked about the social impact of him having tuberculosis and the shunning and the rumors that I mentioned before, and how he felt that all the girls he wanted to have sex with didn't want to have sex with him anymore, and neighbors insulted him and treated him badly after his diagnosis, like I said, pretty much. And he said that whether it was because one of the members of the household was a woman who rejected him, or was a villager who had mocked or insulted him because of his illness, he tried to target everyone who he felt had slighted him. He wrote also that he regretted that he would not be able to shoot some people who he wanted to, and that he would, because that would have involved killing people he regarded as innocent, and he regretted killing people he hadn't planned to, like that family, I guess, that the girl ran to hide. He also wrote that he killed his grandmother because he couldn't bear leaving her alive to face the shame, social stigma, and pain that would be associated with being a murderer's grandmother. So, because of the Second Sino-Japanese War that was going on, the incident was reported on, but it ended up sort of fading into the background of all the war-related, news and stuff like that, propaganda and all that kind of stuff that goes around when there's a war. So it didn't end up getting as much attention as, like, that prostitute lady that I talked about earlier. But it was a big enough deal that even the New York Times ran an article about it the next day on May 22nd, 1938, which you can find online. But it pretty much just says, like, the basics of what happened, And in 1983, a Japanese film named Yoshimitsu no Mura, The Village of Doom, came out based on the massacre, and it starred Masato Furuoya as Tsugiyo Inumaru, an emotionally distraught young man who goes on a violent killing spree after his tuberculosis keeps him from serving in World War II. This is a little bit random, but Furuoya, the actor who played the main guy, ended up committing suicide by hanging on March 25th, 2003, 25 years after the movie's release. In 2005, a book was written about the incident by Akira Tsukuba, and it's called The 30 Murders of Tsuyama, and sure exactly what that means, but with the fact that no one's moved there and there's only 37 people there. But anyway, the house that Mutsuo Toi lived in was demolished in 2015 after sitting abandoned for years. And years and years and years, it sounds like. The incident inspired an urban legend, which is about Tsukisawa Village, Tsukisawa-mura in Japanese, which is supposedly a village in Aomori Prefecture in the Tohoku region of Japan, which is farther north, but still on the main island, not in like Hokkaido or anything. And basically, in that legend, a man in a moment of madness murders the other villagers before killing himself. And the land upon which the village, Tsukisawa Village that is, now abandoned, stood, is supposedly incorporated into a nearby village, and all trace of it is erased from maps and official documents, like it never existed. However, it's said that evil spirits haunt the ruins, and anyone who visits the area will never return. It's also said that the village has two main landmarks that remain standing: an old torii gate that marks the entrance to the village, and a stone that's shaped like a skull. There is supposedly a sign on the road leading to the village that says, quote, "There is no guarantee that those who enter here will remain alive." It's even been said that people who wander close to the site of Tsukisawa Village will hear in the distance, but very clearly, talking and laughter like a festival. The talking and laughter will change into screaming, and while the screaming stops, and after a while the screaming will stop and again return back to talking and laughter. Yeah, creepy. The legend was, for a long time, known only in Aomori Prefecture, you know where it takes place obviously, but it became known nationwide and a topic of internet discussion after a documentary about the story was featured on an episode of Miraculous Experiences Unbelievable, a variety program on Fuji TV. That's Kiseki Taiken. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. The same program featured Tsukisawa Village multiple times, but after finding no definitive evidence of its existence, concluded that, quote, "Tsukisawa Village exists in a distortion of time-space, and the village comes and goes." Or more likely, it just didn't exist at all. The legend, obviously, is very similar to the Tsuyama massacre. So this article that I found the legend on goes on to say that there was, in fact, a settlement known as Tsukisawa Village in Aomori Prefecture, but the place's actual name was Kosugi, a district on the outskirts of the prefecture. Many theories regarding Obatakezawa, a modern-day area in Aomori, exist, but it's known that Tsukisawa was used as an alternative name for Kosugi. The Kosugi area is almost empty now, but this is due to shrinking land boundaries. I don't know what that means. Like global warming. And there's no record of mass killings in the area since the beginning of the Meiji period, which, yeah, I think that's 1860, whatever I said before. Yeah, 1867. As the legend goes, since the population of Tsukisawa Village was wiped out and there were no longer any people to govern, it was absorbed into Aomori City, along with the rest of the Kosugi district. But no Tsukisawa Village existed in the new district, so they didn't carry over the name. Since the story became popularized on that TV show, many fans of the occult and abandoned ruins have visited the area as a test of courage. Many accounts of experiences in the area have been published on the internet, but they're not viewed as being very credible or accurate, and that is the case. I hope you enjoyed this video. My camera battery is dying, so I'm trying to wrap this up really fast before it dies. If you like this video, please leave me a like, a comment, subscribe to my channel, all that stuff. Have a good new year.